It's great to be here, to be able to have the opportunity. So thank you, pros, for giving us the opportunity to give you the industry perspective on what's happening in the world of offer and order management. I know we've got lunch coming up, so I'm not a geek. I'm not a technician. I'm just going to give you a high-level business overview of what's going on and why airlines are doing all this. And I'm going to present it kind of more from the lens of an airline, because that's who we talk to. So it should take you nicely over lunch and not require too much effort, intense intellectual effort on your side. So let's kick off. So I think, first of all, what I wanted to share is this whole journey of transformation we've been talking about, this journey to offer and order management, this journey to modern airline retailing. Well, this is what, as an airline, you may achieve as you embark on this journey. Offsetting your distribution costs. Some airlines, you take a big, large European airline group, you're talking $200 to $300 million a year distribution costs. And some of them have already offset part of it, and some of them have been pretty public about the fact that their goal is to offset all of it. Increase your revenues by an equivalent of 4%. That's what we call value creation. This is what McKinsey came up with in 2019. In 2021, they reconfirmed that these numbers were still there despite COVID, and actually we'll be doing another study with them most likely by the end of the year to update that. So that's a combination of cost savings and revenue increase from the journey to retailing. Payment. One thing we're observing in this journey to retailing is that more and more airlines, we heard a lot about, I think Amit and Suren were talking about distribution revenue management. But more and more of the mature airlines in this journey to retailing are bringing payment and distribution together. Because there's a massive opportunity in payment from a customer centricity point of view. It's $20 billion annual cost for the industry, for the airlines, 80% of which is merchant fees. But if you get payment right for your customer, it can increase your conversion rates, increase your revenue, and maybe there's some cost-saving opportunities as well. Increase your Net Promoter Score and staff satisfaction scores. These are two components linked to the order management part, right? That Suren really insisted, if you're interested in offer management, you cannot ignore order management. So this is what airlines are looking for. And in terms of journey, the transformation journey started. We've all talked about all these decades-old standards and processes that we've got out there. We've been talking about the fact that the industry must adopt retailing practices if it wants to be much more customer-centric than it is today. And also, if it doesn't want to be disintermediated. And finally, to do that, you've got to move to a system of offers and orders. That's the background. And as we heard again this morning, it all accelerated during COVID. In the middle of COVID, we were a bit worried in IATA that as everything ground to a halt, that airlines would say, no, we've got to stop all this. Actually, within IATA, for cost-saving reasons, we kind of began to pause a lot of our work in the area of retailing. But the airlines said to us, you cannot stop NDC in particular, because it's so strategically important for us, you've got to continue. And we all saw the acceleration afterwards. Now, what do airlines expect out of this? I'm sure no one would disagree with any of these. And these are things that we've heard talk about this morning. And quite a few of these components are what pros as a technology provider have been talking about delivering for the airlines. This is what airlines want: revenue opportunities and cost savings and more innovation and more competition. That's what it's all about. In December 2021, at the time, we have in IATA, we have about 10 advisory councils. It's senior representatives of airlines who guide us and give us advice in the direction we should be taking on various topics. One of those groups is the Distribution Advisory Council. And at the time, the chair of that group was Tamor Gudazi-Pour, the Chief Commercial Officer for Swiss from Lufthansa Group. And he actually presented this chart to the IATA Board of Governors, which is 30 airline CEOs, explaining this is what we want to achieve in this modern retailing approach. And of course, you could argue that this is B2C in the airline world, particularly indirect distribution is B2B, but this is the gist of it. And you can see modern retailing, the customer centricity in payment, and moving to orders. And it got quite a lot of support, hence we're continuing to drive this forward. And just as a matter of a little detail, in this Distribution Advisory Council, There are two of our members are here today. Amit from Emirates Group, you just saw on stage, and the new chair of this group is Keith Wallace from Air Canada. And then I think Keith's going to be talking a bit this afternoon as well. Right. So in terms of how we approach this from an industry point of view, we actually got feedback from airlines as IATA saying that all the stuff you're doing, particularly around the standards that come up at the bottom here, that I'm sure a lot of you will have heard of, it's all great, but it's all very, very disjointed because it's quite complicated. And when we're in airlines, where it's the finance people, the digital people, the distribution people, we hear what's going on, we get different stories. So they said, can you please put it under one banner, one umbrella program, and kind of bring it all together? And this is what this is about. Ultimately, what we call the Modern Airline Retailing Program is about airlines taking back control. Taking back control of their product, their money, and their data. Again, if airlines don't do that, not only will they not be able to increase value creation, so increase revenue, reduce their costs further, they won't be able to be true retailers. But again, there's a massive risk that they will be disintermediated. And then we have three pillars. So the first one is kind of it's work in progress. We're just exploring, but it's all about digital identification. The B2C component, which is about ultimately being able to better identify the customer in going to a world of personalization. But there's also the B2B component. Because in this new world of retailing, one of the big changes is that the GDSs, which remain important as aggregators going forward, no longer carry out that central role of connectivity between all the players. So going forward, you're going to need some kind of digital identification of all your partners, and that's what airlines are asking us to do, is to look at an industry approach to digitally identifying all the players in the ecosystem. So this is exploration phase, and we're working on a proof of concept with some airlines and some partners for the end of the year. The most mature pillar is this one, retailing with offers. You could argue it's kind of a NDC, essentially. It's about airlines being able to create their products, building new partnerships, about dynamic pricing, and also, as I said, payment is really important. So I'm just going to dive into this a little bit, just to see where we're at. If you look at all the announcements that have taken place over the last, a few months, but even going back, even the oldest one I have here is September 2021, when Finnair announced that by 2025, there'd be no more EDIFACT distribution. That's quite bold, and especially as Finnair. I wouldn't say they're small, but they're not large. They're kind of a medium-sized airline. So that's a really, really good sign for a medium-sized airline, making that kind of decision. In here, you can see some other bits of information. Southwest looking at, defunct NDC exchange, what's their journey going to be. SAS made a big announcement, very aggressive, then kind of slowed down a little bit, but then went in with Amadeus, but still they have plans to start removing or differentiating content. In there, you can see in the middle, what's really important is some of the big players, the big TMCs, have been very slow to embark on this journey. I guess the airlines started it. Leisure then followed very, very quickly, because they say it's simpler than business travel. Now the GDSs are starting to move, and the TMCs, I guess we're waiting for the GDS, so things have to take place in sequence. But American Express, in February, said, okay, we buy into this, but there's a set of minimum NDC requirements that all the airlines need to be able to cater to for us to be able to maintain our productivity to serve our clients properly. And then a few months later, they're now in test with Air France KLM and Amadeus, I believe. So that's a really, really good sign that everyone's starting to move. And even down here, we can see Keith Wallace's announcement from Air Canada, which again is really positive. Then there have been a few more announcements. There was American Airlines, of course. You heard what they did on the 3rd of April. That was, wow, well, what a move. But a few weeks afterwards, they announced that they would have 80% of their bookings would come direct or via NDC by the year end. So really bullish here. Another airline came out, which had been pretty quiet until now, actually. Air France KLM, a few weeks ago, announced that by this is in French, but I'm sure you get the gist of it. By 2027, 90% of their indirect sales will be from NDC. So you can really see there's a massive momentum, a commitment, but also what's important is that airlines are more and more comfortable to talk publicly about this. Because for lots of reasons, some maybe being commercial, airlines for quite a while were more discreet. Another interesting one was this one. The Amadeus CEO says 2024, we're definitely going to start to see some big volumes of NDC. You like them or not, the GDSs are really important for the ecosystem. GDSs becoming aggregators certainly have a role to play, particularly in the way they provide the reach to all the travel agents that they cover. But that doesn't mean there's not room for some of the small challenges as well. But here to have Luis Morato say that, it just shows it's definitely on their radar. And when Luis Morato says that to the industry analysts, it's something that you can't just say and then not follow through. So I can guarantee you that next year, they're going to be all over him on that. And I just want to close on one quote. There was this 15th of May, it's a couple of weeks old. This gentleman, Alex Irving, is from Bernstein industry analysts. So what they do, they analyze what's happening in the industry. They follow tech providers, GDSs, pros, and airlines, and then they make analysis for their customers, investors. I don't know if you've had time to read that, but it's quite a breakthrough. Yeah? And this just shows that the world's changing. Now, as IATA, we don't get involved in commercials at all. We look after technical standards. But it's obvious that to be able to understand and to drive adoption of standards, you at least need to understand what's happening with the money flows. And this, I think it just shows that the world is changing. There's value to be created, and all the players across the value chain will find good ways of sharing that value. So, some airlines are seeing benefits already. There's a group, you remember in 2018, we had a group, a leaderboard of 20 to 22 airlines who kind of paved the way in adoption of NDC. Most of those are the ones seeing benefits today. So first, what we see is airlines who've terminated full content. Amit from Emirates this morning, he said, yeah, phase 0, you've got to break out of your full content deal. If you're stuck with the full content, then your hands are tied, right? You can't do much. You can have the best technology that pros can provide you, but if you've got your full content, you're massively handicapped to move forward. So here we're seeing, as I said earlier, some airlines are already talking about offsetting significant 3-digit levels of distribution costs, which is massive. But we've also talked to some smaller airlines, and they're able to see some savings as well, right? And this can be a combination of lower fees when you use the intermediary as an aggregator. It can be savings because you're shifting to lower cost channels, or it can be offsetting because you have a surcharge. Other things we're seeing is that, of course, ancillary sales, it's kind of the most obvious. This morning we heard there's the really good demonstration of the whole e-commerce platform, for example, here that Pros provides for airlines, but that's direct sales, where you're great at selling ancillaries. So the easy win that a lot of airlines consider to start, depending on their strategy, of course, if they've got ancillaries, is to say, well, if I can replicate that capability I have on my website through the travel agent channel, bingo, there you go. And we're seeing that, there's evidence of that. Even small airlines, once again, because it's important, are telling us, yes, we are definitely increasing our ancillary sales, and that means more profitability. Continuous pricing. We as IATA, we're very cautious about the numbers for continuous pricing, because depending on who you talk to, it can go from 1% to 8%, I think, revenue increase. And it also depends the phase at which the industry is in, because when everyone does continuous pricing, it's very, very different than when you're one of the leaders doing continuous pricing. But here, I asked the 12 airlines to share with me their concrete benefit realization, which is why I'm giving you some of the numbers that we've been seeing in here. One airline, I think a couple of airlines, went actually up to 4%, talking about the benefit from continuous pricing. And finally, content differentiation is key. There's the carrot, there's the stick, lots of different commercial strategies. What we see, what we observe is that the most effective is content. That's what airlines have. Airlines have got content. And that's the value. Just having a surcharge, particularly in the corporate arena, $20, $30 surcharge gets lost in the wash of a business class fare, if you're going long haul. But content is key, and that's one of the key strategies that's coming out for the airlines. So it's great for us to see that there's some concrete benefit realization already coming now. So the third pillar is delivering with orders. Because again, as we heard this morning, you can have really great offer management capabilities and have really good retailing techniques and good products and bundles very quickly. We're starting to hear it now from some of the leading airlines. You're limited because you've got to fulfill into PNRs, e-tickets, and EMDs. And it's funny, when you explain to people who are not from our industry what a PNR is, an e-ticket is, an EMD, they just look at you and say, wow, wow. So, to tackle this, what we did, I always forget this slide. This is the end part, as I was saying, if you want to have all this capability that you've got enough for management and for it to be realizable, to become truly customer-centric, you need to move to offers and orders only. There's no other way. If you don't have the order component, you're only halfway there, if not less. So we set up a consortium of airlines. These airlines said, yeah, we've got this end vision of offers and orders only on our roadmap. We've already got the experience of retailing with offers. And yeah, it's on the radar of our C-level. So these airlines have been working together since about 8 months now, and they've worked on several modules. What this consortium is about helping accelerate this journey to offers and orders only. And these are the modules that they're working on. The first one I'll touch upon in a second, which is a business case. It's, I'll talk about it in a second. The second one is a reference architecture. Seraine this morning talked about modularity going forward, that PROS was going to provide an ecosystem, an architecture that's going to be modular, so you can take best of breed if you want to, so that it's not that big black box that airlines have today, for example, as a PSS. And that's what the consortium actually has delivered. These 12 airlines have worked together and delivered what we call an industry reference architecture. It's now been handed over to what we call our standards groups who work on it, for it to become ultimately a recommended practice. What that means is that the description of this reference architecture will be validated by the industry, being the airlines. And that means that each time, of course, if airlines want, all the tech providers will kind of look towards this reference industry architecture when they're engaging with the airlines. Just by talking the same language, knowing that the airlines are in control of their destiny because they're the ones who are kind of designing that, will help going forwards. It's to be more transparent and it should be much more efficient as well. What airlines do not want is to end up in a position where the tech providers know everything, they've got control of everything going forwards, a little bit like today, because a lot of them have divested a lot in IT capability. They want to take back that control as well. And then we're working on an RFI framework, which is to take that reference architecture, all the modules, say, well, what are the business requirements for all these components? And then based on that, with these business requirements, it'll enable each airline individually, if they want, to go and engage the tech providers, again, on something that everyone's got visibility of. And in this process, we're talking to the technology providers as well. And the last two components are about the transition, because it's great to know where you're heading and how to get there, but you need that transition pathways, and it's very, very complex. And these last three items will deliver by October, and we'll be sharing them at an IATA conference in October. Just to very quickly zooming on the business case, it's on our website. You can scan that code if you want. But you can see in the McKinsey study 2019, they said that by 2030, by adopting all these retailing techniques, offer management, order management, etc., it could drive up to 4% value creation, I said, which is the equivalent of $40 billion annual value creation, or $7 per passenger as an industry reference. So these numbers just show how you would get to that $7 per passenger based on NDC, which is 5.3, sorry, and one order, which is up to 1.7. And it's broken down whether it's from the PSS, GDS contracts, with its revenue, etc. These are just indications that these airlines helped us put together, but it is very useful for airlines who've given us some really good feedback that they can use that individually in their own business case. So I think time's up, so I've got 2 more slides. Just as a reminder, so the last 2, some airlines have been telling us that what they want to achieve is, through the indirect channels, thanks to this journey to retailing, is to have a net promoter score that's at least as good as on their website. And thanks to the move to 100% offers and orders, so to full order management, that can be achievable. And in the work on the business case for 100% offer and order management, one item that came out from the airlines is actually staff satisfaction. And more now, staff retention, staff satisfaction is becoming more important for the airlines. Just as an example, imagine a disruption for the airport staff, managing disruptions during COVID, having to reconcile your PNRs, your e-tickets, your AMDs on the spot. It's a nightmare. In a world of orders, for your staff, they'll be much more productive, much less stressed, particularly in case of disruption. And my last slide is, I've just given you some pretty good reasons why you should join the journey. But if you choose to remain in the legacy world as an airline, as more and more airlines are kind of moving in this, it becomes obvious that if you don't, well, you're going to miss out on some of the cost and revenue savings I talked about. You might well see an increase in your distribution and IT costs because legacy is going to become marginalized. You're going to see an increase in payment costs because one of the outcomes of a study carried out last year we did with Edgar Dunn and McKinsey, again, it's on our website, where we came out there's $20 billion payment costs. McKinsey actually then extrapolated that, said, well, by the way, if airlines put in place the right strategies for payment, on that $40 billion of retailing annual value creation, you could add another 14 billion. But at the same time, McKinsey said, if airlines do nothing in payment, that 40, it doesn't become 54, it could reduce to 14 to 14 as well, because airlines become disintermediated in the area of payment. And the last point is, if you stay in the world of legacy, there are some risks of hacking and customer data breach, because the systems of today are not designed for API connectivity into the PSS. They haven't got privacy by design, etc. So there are some risks here. So there you go. That was kind of an overview of the journey. The world's definitely moving on. There's definitely value creation. And more now, if you don't move as an airline, there's potential competitive risk. So that's it for now, because it's lunch. And this afternoon, if you want to join myself and Marisol from Iberia on the panel, we can tell you even more. But in the meantime, enjoy your lunch. Thank you.